One of the best and easiest ways to upgrade our songwriting is simply to upgrade our chord toolbox, because it's so easy to just gravitate towards the same major, minor chords, and eventually it just isn't doing quite enough harmonically. Sure, you could make a whole songwriting career out of literally just using major or minor, but at some point you get bored with it, things start to sound the same because you've done the same chords over and over again. And a great way to spice things up without having to learn a whole lot or without having to do anything difficult is simply by incorporating some different types of chords. So in this video, we're going to talk about add chords. So let's start at the beginning. What on earth is an add chord? Well, an add chord is really something super simple. All it is you take a regular triad and then you just add another note. And if you're not sure what a triad is, basically any major chord, any minor chord, any augmented chord, or any diminished chord would all be triads. A triad is simply a chord that is made up of three notes that are stacked in thirds. So you have a first, a third, a fifth. Like for example, C major, you have your first C, and then you skip over D to get to E, and then you skip over F to get to G, so that is stacked in thirds. That's all it is. So an add chord is just something that either adds a second, a fourth, or a sixth to your chord, which is sometimes known as a ninth, 11th, or 13th instead. In fact, the only note that you can't add and it be a true add chord is a seventh, and that's because seventh chords are their own thing. But for a regular add chord, you're adding either the second, the fourth, or the sixth. So what does that look like? But first, let's answer the question, why should we care? Why do we care about adding an add chord to our chord toolbox to possibly use in our songs? And I think the real answer here is just that it is more harmonically interesting. And even adding one chord that is slightly different than your normal major minor chords to a chord progression can spice up your song a ton. So if you have a 4-chord progression and you simply take one of them and make them an add chord rather than the regular major or minor chord that they were before, that can make your chord progression instantly so much more harmonically interesting and therefore your song more harmonically interesting. So just to give you a little idea of why it is that just adding one note can actually make a chord significantly more harmonically interesting, let's think about the different intervals we have in a regular triad. So in a regular triad, you have a first, a third, and a fifth. We won't worry about the quality of them in this example. So what intervals do we have within that chord? Well, we have the interval of the first to the third, that's one. Then we have the first to the fifth, that's a second interval, and then the only one left is the one from the third to the fifth. So we have 3 total different intervals that have different sounds contained in our regular triads. But what about an add chord? Let's take an add 2, for example. We have the interval from the first to the second, and then the first to the third, and then the first to the fifth. So we're already at 3, which is what our previous triads had in total. And we've just covered the first to the different notes. So now we also have the second to the third, and the second to the fifth. And then we have the third to the fifth. So we actually have 6 different intervals in any add chord, which is literally double the amount of intervals we have in a regular triad, like a major or minor chord. So that's why it's so much more harmonically interesting, even though we may think it's only one note. So now let's talk about the 3 types of add chords that we have. So the first one is an add 2 chord, which is otherwise known as an add 9 chord. In fact, I would say that it's usually labeled as an add 9 more often than an add 2. But why is it that those are fundamentally the same? Well, if you think about it, we have 7 notes in any major or minor key or scale, right? So let's take C major, for example. We have C, D, E, F, G, A, B, and then back to C. So our first and our eighth are the same, because C and C, right? So that means our ninth would be the same as our second. So that's why an add 9 is technically the same as an add 2. Now you could argue that an add 2 is implying that, for example, a C add 2 chord would be C, D, E, and G in that order, whereas the implication of add 9 would be C, E, G, and then D over an octave above that first C. But that's really getting in the weeds and the details and doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, they're basically the same exact chord. So all we're doing here is we are simply taking our normal triad and we're also adding the second. Let's take C major, and then we have our C, we have our E, and we have our G. So all we're doing is adding the 2. And our one of our chord, as well as our key, but in this case, we care about the one of our chord, is simply a C. It's a C major chord that we're building off of. So then we go to the very next note that is in the context of the key, which would be D. It's not a D flat or a D sharp, it's just a natural D. So in that case, we are just going to add that D to the chord, and that would be our add 2 or add 9 chord. Generally speaking, you're going to want to use your add 9 or add 2 chords on major chords. And the reason for this is in major chord scenarios, your add 9 chord is actually going to have intervals only as small as a major second. It will not have a minor second, which makes it a little less gnarly sounding and a little less dissonant. It has just enough dissonance to make it sound interesting, but not enough dissonance that it really starts to sound quite dissonant. So just for an idea on this, let's take our C major again. In that case, we have C, D, E, and G. From C to D is actually a major second because a minor second would be C to C sharp or D flat. And then from D to E, also we're skipping over D sharp or E flat. So those are both major seconds. But in the case of add 9 chords that are minor, you're actually going to have a minor second, which is a very, very dissonant interval, which if you want to do that, and if you want that for effect, so the next type of add chord is an add 4 chord or an add 11 chord. And it's the same exact concept. If we take C major, this time we're just adding the 4. So we have C, E, and E is our third. So we add F as well as the G that we would have in our normal C major triad. So once you know one add chord, you can figure out all the other ones. All you need to be able to do is count the letters and know what notes or what qualities you have in the key. So you need to know, for example, if you have an A sharp or if it's an A flat or an A natural. But besides that, all you're doing is you are simply adding the number as long as you can count. So for an add 6 chord, for example, again, let's take C major. What do you think we're adding in the context of a C major chord where we're adding a 6th? Well, we have our first C, our third E, and then our 5th is a G. So what would our 6th be? Yes, exactly. It would be an A. So this was a lot, but the basic takeaways are that add chords have a lot more going on harmonically. In fact, it has literally double the amount of intervals as a regular triad, and therefore will instantly make your songs more harmonically interesting. Even if you just add one to your song, it will make a difference. And then from there, if you are making a major chord into an add chord, you might want to try using an add 2 or an add 9 first, as it will be less overtly dissonant, as the smallest interval that it has is a major second rather than a minor second, which is extremely dissonant. In fact, the most dissonant interval we have, arguably. If you are using a minor chord and you're trying to make a minor chord into an add chord, you might want to gravitate towards the add 4 or the add 11 first. Of course, you can choose to use an add chord that involves a minor second interval. In fact, you might want that. You might want your chord to sound that dissonant. So if you do, be sure to do exactly the opposite of what I just said, right? Then go for that add chord that actually has that minor second interval that really makes it sound extra dissonant. But if you don't want it to sound that dissonant, you just want it to be more harmonically interesting, then you want to go for the chords that only contain a major second as the smallest interval. So hopefully you found this helpful, and if you did, another thing you will definitely find helpful is my free guide on the 4 pillars of music theory that I think every songwriter needs to know, and those are intervals, keys, chords, and chord progressions. If you understand those 4 things, those are the absolute pillars, foundational to songwriting. If you don't understand those, then you are usually going to spend a lot of time sort of just playing random notes or doing random chord progressions or saying things like, well, I hear that C chords and G chords sound good together, so you just keep doing chord progressions that are the same 3-4 chords that you know go good together, go well together. And that is not the way to songwrite. You are limiting yourself way too much. If you simply learn these 4 pillars, it will completely revolutionize how you can write music, because you will no longer be so constrained to such a limited musical vocabulary. And instead, you'll be able to do things, especially if you're competent at your instrument, like be able to sit at a piano or whatever your instrument is and just improvise music for hours that actually sounds good because you understand, for example, that you are in the key of E major, and because you're in the key of E major, you know that your main major chords are going to be E major, A major, and B major. You also know that your main minor chords are going to be F sharp major, G sharp major, and C sharp major. Also, you know all the different notes that you have. You know you have E, F sharp, G sharp, A, B, C sharp, and D sharp. So when you know all those things, when you're playing on the piano or the guitar, you know, here are all the notes I have, here are generally the chords that I have to build off of, as well as also knowing what chords flow well into other chords. For example, knowing that a 5 chord, which in the context of E major would be a B major chord, actually has a strong draw to go back to a 1 chord, which your 1 chord in the context of E major is an E major chord. So if anything I just said was like, what on earth are you talking about? Grab the guide, because that will teach you everything that I just talked about, but not just for E major. It will teach you in a way that you will understand it for all of the different keys, not just specifically E major or C major. That way you can take your knowledge into any different key that you may be writing your music in. So if you're interested, be sure to check it out. Link in the description. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate every single one of you. I'll talk to you in the next one.